Here is the guy filling in for Steve Malzberg for Monday and Tuesday. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner, sitting in for Steve today. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, a very happy Passover to all of our viewers. Well, let's go ahead and get to the panel right now because we welcome into the studio Newsmax writer Bill Hoffmann. And via telephone, we welcome in our Newsmax White House correspondent John Gizzi, who joins us today. John, you with us?
Yes, I sure am.
All right, John,
Thanks
I know that you
for
just came from the White House and talking a little bit about what's happening with the president and some potential sanctions here regarding Russia, Putin, Ukraine. Let's just kind of bring ourselves down here from all three of us to what we just talked about a little bit, and that, of course, is the Boston Marathon bombing today, the one-year anniversary, a very tough day in Boston. From the White House side of things and from your side of things, John, as we look towards now, a year later, and I guess the simple question that a lot of people are asking is our government doing enough to keep us safe in light of what we're now learning are a lot of mistakes that were made in the Boston Marathon wake?
Well, again, the standard answer coming from the most famous podium in the world at the White House is we can't say because we don't want to tip our hand on these things. One would like to think that the Department of Homeland Security, working in coordination with state and local law enforcement agencies, is improving the safety situation. But one has to remember, George W. Bush's great legacy, and he himself would probably tell you this, was that after 9/11, through the rest of his presidency, there were no further bombings or terrorist attacks on American soil. Now, of course, we had the Boston bombing 1 year ago, and one cannot say that that situation lasted. So one has to hope that government's taking a good, hard look at itself.
Well, let me go ahead and ask you, Bill, sitting here and what you know, and we watch this, do you think the government is doing
to say that things are safer, but as far as if they actually are, I just don't think that we know yet. It's obvious that that George W. Bush, when he was president, didn't have any other attacks after 9/11. That's true. I think, though, that I think at this stage of the game this year, after the Boston Marathon bombing, I think people just keep their fingers crossed now, not really knowing whether something's going to happen. I don't know if things are as safe as they once were.
That's a pretty brutal way to live, don't you think? I mean, just really sitting around with our fingers crossed more than anything else?
Yeah, but you really have to be, especially if you're from Boston and from New York now, where two of the worst attacks occurred. We always walk down the street now and we see a cop, we go, we're glad that cop's there, but at the same time, it's like, boy, I wish that cop didn't have to be there because it's a different world we live in now.
Well, the different world, part and parcel of what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now. John, you're on top of it. The White House right now with regard to, again, we understand that President Obama, President Putin have spoken, and I can probably say again that not much was really said of substance, and again, it was probably just a lot of pleasantries at this point. How close am I?
Well, Jay Carney would probably beg to differ with you. They had an hour conversation.
Jay Carney will always beg to differ with that sort of an idea.
Yes, exactly. And again, my colleagues were trying to get him to ask if the conversation got intense or there were any raised voices, and he wouldn't say on that. He said it took an hour and they discussed a wide range of things. He says this is how world leaders talk. That said, Jay kept up the talk about further action the U.S. takes in order to bring Russia to the negotiating table and end uprisings which he says are not organic and which he implied very strongly were being orchestrated by Moscow. Now, one of the things that came up was, with all the talk of further sanctions, was the administration planning sanctions against Putin himself. And that is something that Jay Carney would not deny, only saying that the White House was considering a wide range of options on the table. I can tell you that the idea of targeting President Putin himself has a wide following and very bipartisan in the House of Representatives, and it's something you're going to hear about in the coming days.
All right, Bill. I hate to say this, but it just is more of the same. No matter what we get from the White House, it is always more of the same, and people are still wondering about substantive action.
I think that they're going to have to, in the next couple of weeks, maybe even days, have to put in a concrete plan of sanctions against Putin. I mean, Putin is the man. When you think of Russia doing these things, when you think of the former Soviet Union and everything like that, listen, everything is just sort of where it is. But Putin is the face of what's going on there, and I think he's the one we have to go after.
All right, but let's get to that then, because here comes that solid question that everybody's asking. We've heard this. We have to do something against Putin. What? Short of sending somebody up and getting John McCain in there with a bazooka? I mean, what do we do from here?
Well,
maybe knock him off his horse or something like that, with his shirt off.
It wouldn't be a bad idea, but then again, I don't know if I want to see that picture again myself either. It brings up bad memories. John?
Well, you know something, gentlemen? Congressman Robert Pittenger, who chairs the Congressional Panel on Terrorism, suggested going further, imposing sanctions in such a way that it would upset the oligarchs and, in his words, depose Putin. He would like to take actions to get the powers in Russia to kick him out. Now, that's a little dramatic, a little histrionic, but it also shows the degree that some members of Congress would like to go. So someone is talking about some strong action. I might add that his office suggested I call a Democratic member of Congress, Lois Frankel of Florida, who agrees with him on these strong measures.
Well, I mean, wait a minute, but taking that tack, what you're talking about, that sounds like the most salient thing we've heard so far, because it's all about money. Putin loves his cash. He loves his bank account. He has all those the oligarchs around him and all of the money in the corporations who make so much money. If you just start from the bottom up and if you start to cut into these guys' profits a little bit, it does seem to make sense that that's the only way to get to this guy right now is strictly through the wallet, correct?
This is what Congressman Pittenger says, and he said that kind of measure has bipartisan support. Look, we've applied the Magnitsky Act, which allows the freezing of assets of Russian diplomats, businessmen, and their families to a great degree. We've never applied it to Putin himself or to a number of the oligarchs who are there. This could certainly cause a lot of disruption. But again, this idea originated with one Republican House member, a freshman. He says it has a bigger following. That's going to be interesting to see in the days ahead.
Bill?
I also think we have to really hit Putin in his great Olympic Village dream of having Russia become a massive tourist spot for everyone. If you look at the website for the Russian tourism now, it's huge, it's gigantic, it's really tripled, quadrupled over the past year or so. And to keep American citizens and others, to discourage them from going over there and spending their money, I think could do a lot of good for us.
Is there any discussion, whatever, John, we got about 30 seconds left, but certainly there's a lot of talk about civil war, as if civil war hasn't already broken out in the Ukraine, certainly with what we're seeing from there at least, of what this administration can do, if anything, regarding this. We keep hearing actions to be taken, but what can you really do?
Well, again, they're not calling it civil war, they're calling it phony war, in the sense that you're seeing masked men who suddenly find themselves with armor and bazookas, and they're taking over police stations. One wonders if people in the Ukraine really keep that kind of thing in their basements. But these things are happening, and it's an orchestrated civil war, apparently. Now, as to what action we'll take, we won't take military action. I think we're focusing on the economic front and hope the EU follows suit. We'll see on that in a couple of days.
Look out, look out. We're hoping for the EU to do something. Let's hope for the UN to do something next. We'll see which one that hits first. John Gizzi in Washington, thanks so much. We'll talk with you later on in the show. And Bill Hoffmann here in the studios, thank you so much. We got a lot more to come. The Steve Malzberg Show. I'm Ed Berliner sitting in. Stay with us right here as we follow the news our way on Newsmax TV.
We don't just talk about the news, we talk to those making news. This is the Steve Malzberg Show.